really start recording and ask you some questions because, first of all, I really want to hear what it's like from the inside, doing the kind of work that you're doing. Secondly, I just started reading all the emails that I've been getting from this kind of refi organization. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's like at least a weekly email that's a roundup. Right? Then maybe that's a refi roundup or something. And I've been thinking, so many young people are, struggling with this question of what do they do that can make a difference, and yet going into this refi space, the whole crypto. I mean, it just seems like it's a world of possibility that is waiting to be explored. It's kind of like when the internet first occurred or something like that. And yeah, it's really remarkable because mostly what you hear is about the blockchain and the Bitcoin, and it's nonsense. But all this other stuff that's going on is amazing. And I just, I mean, I've always been interested, I guess, in computers and coding and stuff like that, even though it's only rarely been my real work focus. Actually spent, I think, a summer putting in high-speed networks for one of the companies that Victoria works for, and writing databases and designing interfaces at various points. But really, that hasn't been a big part of my career. But I just don't understand why there isn't this kind of rush to the, and maybe there is. It's just the people who are coming with this question about what to do with their lives just haven't discovered it yet. So it's maybe one of the ways that we can share with people, some of what's happened. And you're right there in the front line. So do you want to talk about it a little bit, and then we can go back?
Well, I want to hear from you and Victoria if you have check-ins as well.
Sure. Well, Victoria's not feeling very well. And
I can just I can just say I got COVID. So and Jonathan is in my sister's house. Thank goodness that we are very, very close. And so he doesn't get exposed to it. And I had boosters, so it's a very mild case, but still not feeling that great. Taking the luxury of just being in bed and listening. And if I have something to contribute, I'll raise my hand.
Great.
But I'm interested in, is the sprint, I'm interested when we start again, after Jonathan shares that, is the sprint over, or are you still in the midst of the sprint?
Still in it.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for taking time right now for this. So
I'll be leaving at the top of the hour for the next chapter. So
right.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And
so
if we don't get some more folks signing on, we may leave at the top of the hour as well. It just depends on.
Well, yeah, and it would be good to figure out, just, say what our intentions are. And right now I'm just listening.
Got it. Well, I, on the other hand, am doing really remarkably well. And given that, Victoria and I haven't been together for 6 days already, and it looks like we won't be able to be close for another 5 to 10 days, and it's driving me a little nuts that we can't be more physically engaged. But nonetheless, life is really amazingly great here. And, we're moving towards fall. The leaves are just magnificent up and down our street and all over the place. And becoming more important as part of my life. One of the really great things that happened today is I started having some conversations with Victoria's sister, and I mentioned that one of the things I'm doing is this exploring racism group. and we have to come up with an action plan. Understand what can I do about it? And then Connie actually reminded me, well, why don't you go and start a project to green the inner city, which is what I've been talking about for, on and off for a year. And we've been actually trying to get corporate volunteers to come with us and help put in trees. So that's going to be my action plan, and we're going to make it happen. We're going to get, it's so amazing to me. Now, it's such a simple thing to do, and it will make such a huge difference in these neighborhoods. So that's where I am and how I am. So glad to be here.
I would love to make a recommendation to you, if I may, Jonathan,
Please.
which is a book. It's a book, and it's called Making the Impossible Possible.
Oh, wonderful.
And the author of that book, whose name is escaping me right now, but I heard him speak about 15, 20 years ago. Amazing human being. And I believe his town is Pittsburgh. And he said about transforming the space with all kinds of things, not just trees, but all kinds of things to uplift the spirit and transform the whole place. It's a great book, and he's a great person. And it's not well known. Yeah.
Well, I will look
That's
it up.
Bill Strickland. That's him. Bill Strickland. What an amazing guy. Yeah. So have a chat to Bill. Read his book and have a chat to Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you, Darin.
Sometimes I just have to capture the things that you say, Jake, because they're so great.
Well, Darin has done it right in the chat. So there's
great. Fabulous.
There's the reference.
Wonderful. Yeah. All right. So where shall we go from here? Do you want to start talking about your life's work? Do we want to get Darin to talk about his? I think if we actually unpack what each of us does and how we live, it might help people if they're interested in watching this. And I know at least one of our friends has indicated that, he's interested in watching even if he can't come. And so, I'll post the recording when I'm finished. And it could be relatively short because, all of us have other things to do. So why don't you talk a little bit about, ask a refi question. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you want to go back to that question, Jonathan? What did you, how can I?
So how do you understand refi?
Oh, that's a good question. It brings me back to Confucius, who when asked if he was given a magic wand and could change anything about culture and society, he said, if I was given that capacity, the first thing I would do is correct language.
All right.
He kind of named the whole challenge. And, for me, I'm grateful because I went through the entire evolution of mixed media to multimedia to interactive media to transmedia to, and you'll remember all this, Jonathan, right? To the web, which became the internet, which is a bit weird because the internet predated the web, but and then web 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, now 5. There's something called Web 5, just a one-upsmanship thing. And so in the FI department, we got DeFi, decentralized finance, right? That was after FinTech. So we have one web, the web of communication and interaction. And now this next web, which is, if you boil it down, is the web of transaction. And so bringing these two together, we we have a hope of actually an integrated system that might work for a planetary society. We were missing this transaction piece because it's been, you know, kept by a small group. And so, yeah, so we have DeFi, which came onto the scene pretty explosively in 2020, like one of the fastest growth curves of anything ever, in terms of tech. And then we recognize traditional finance as TradFi, right?
Okay.
That's now what it's called. It's called TradFi. Everything that's
Okay.
banking and lending and stocks and bonds and
Mhm.
securities and all of that is now TradFi. It's Wall Street and banking. And so the new kid on the block is refi, regenerative finance. Now it's a catch-all term, just like multimedia was. Like, we actually don't know what we're talking about yet, but we know it's something to do with bringing the earth into the conversation. And it's something to do with collaborating on how we want to do money. And it's something to do with healing our wounds from the previous FIs.
Right.
So that's my understanding.
Oh,
It's
that's wonderful.
it's kind of
Yeah, that's a really great, you know, kind of overview. Part of what I've been watching are these folks who are trying to create ecosystem credits. And, you know, they want to go beyond carbon credits because they feel that that's really doesn't represent what we're actually about or what we actually need. I mean, after all, we are carbon-based life forms ourselves, as they say. So sequestering carbon is probably not the ultimate thing that we're going to do. But that's really great. So thank you very much. The thing that struck me, one of the things that struck me that was so interesting is that here the next generation has appropriated a word that, of course, every adult American already knows, which is how to refi their house. And but it's not even a question. Are they going to have to explain to anybody that refi is not refinancing your property? Like, that's not necessary because the generations are hardly even speaking to each other. So, which in some ways is a good thing. I mean, this whole process that we go through where the next generation comes along with its ideas and recognizes its problems and goes about fixing them in ways that we would never have thought of is just, you know, that's the real kind of payoff for the, you know, the way that nature has organized us. Yeah.
You know, another thing is that I want to bring up in answer to your question is that Fernanda Ibarra did a presentation for Pro Social this past week, and it was brilliant. And I haven't yet reposted it on ER, but I will. And it's so worth the watch because she's kind of the lyrical embodiment of what refi wants to be.
Right.
Amazing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She's an amazing person. I don't know her well, but I believe that she's spends a fair amount of time with David Rose.
Yep, they used to be partners. Yeah. I didn't know you know David. That's great.
Yeah, and how I know David is really interesting, and how Victoria knows him as well is interesting. I was invited to a couple of workshops, one in 2011 and another one in 2013, called Financial Permaculture workshops. And they were put on by the Institute for Financial Permaculture, which was based in Hohenwald, Tennessee, in Lewis County, in the poorest county in Tennessee. And so the first one was there, and I met Albert Bates and a bunch of other people. And then the next one was in Florida, in South Miami, and David Rose was one of the speakers. And it just, really great. And so, when Victoria decided, or mutually decided with Deloitte, that she was no longer working for them, she spent most of a year working with David Rose on community banks. And I still think that's a really great thing, and we're going to keep pushing it. And although right now I'm just more interested in getting the existing local banks and credit unions more involved in the community and doing more stuff with people around decarbonizing buildings and stuff like that. But that's where we are.
And he's back to his prior endeavor right now, focus on the gentle drawing centers, which,
yes.
by the way, Darin, he started in Hawaii, which is where he's grounded. He was living for a long time in Hawaii, and I think he's now back in Maui. Last I talked to him, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, he was heading back from the States. But yeah, he's doing an amazing thing that he had started even before Unified Field Bank, which is creating concentrated, dehydrated superfoods. So, and his first endeavor was really sourced in the realization that Hawaii imports 90% of what it uses, and that's ridiculous. So he started looking at the indigenous foodstuffs and how they could be economically supportive and also make Hawaii self-sufficient. And I had for years, because it lasted for years, his pineapple powder, which was, it's super concentrated. It's like you could just, that is an entire mouthful of pineapple. It's incredible stuff. And he does that with a number of foods now. And he developed the technology in Hawaii. I would say this would be probably almost 20 years ago that he did that. So I met him right around 2006, 2007, when he was doing that and before he started Unified Field Bank. So yeah, it's,
great.
All of us have been on these extraordinary journeys, right?
Yes. And his company is called Just One Organic. So if you don't know it, Darin, you should look it up.
Yeah.
It's quite a model.
He's your neighbor. Cool dude.
So let's move over to Darin and find out more about how you have managed to get to this age and still be alive and do the things that you do.
So a lot to unpack on that question, but if I can add to my check-in then, so I just went to the University of Hawaii. They have a small venture capital fund, and so I gave my less than 3-minute pitch, and the questions were longer than the pitch, meaning there are students who run the fund, meaning the adults are the ones who hold the purse strings, but the students decide what's to be funded, is my understanding of it. Right. So I was in a room with 14 students and one advisor professor, and I started off with asking the question, who cares about global warming? Not being funny, but just being normal tone of voice for a pitch. And 5 of them yelled back at me, it's the most important thing. It's on our minds constantly. It's, I was not ready for the response. So then I went into why I'm bringing it up, that yes, the military industrial complex is what causes the most carbon pollution, the most greenhouse gases, the most poisons in our atmosphere. But right after that is our agriculture use. So that's the one thing that me, So unpacking Jonathan's question, what's led me to this point is being a generational master beekeeper since the 1400s. So I have that weight of presence of families working towards stewardship. And my dad's line is that he wanted to help beekeepers, and his selfish reasoning is the diseases that other beekeepers have will come to us, our family. So we want to mitigate it when it's not our bees, not when it's on our doorstep.
Right.
So we want to preempt problems that we know will happen to us in 10 years because we, my family, have that ability behind us to bring back this knowledge in order to say, okay, here's a new problem, but honeybees are the same. They act the same way. We can use extra tools that come along, like antibiotics, as a tool, not as a catch-all. And then, so just like in my presentation, I'm explaining, okay, the current use is antibiotics, and that's getting into our food system, and that's chemicals in agriculture, and that's the problems. So how do you solve that? And my answer is the same as refi. It's regenerative. I'm going back to Hawaiian medicine plants as the solution. I'm using it both as the means of solving it and this background knowledge. So now I'm talking about my being a teacher of Hawaiian medicine plants that is from my daughter's lineage. So I learned under their great-great-grandfather, and I'm the steward now, holding his knowledge that he's passed on for my daughters so that they can spread traditional Pacific Island medicine plants knowledge, because it's lost in here, Hawaii, or it's underground in Hawaii, or it's not being used in Hawaii. Whichever way people, it's not known or it's not shared is what I'm trying to say. So I'd rather have here in Hawaii medicine plants being grown that are indigenous and safe and not using chemicals and not using antibiotics and not using pesticide, and still bring back value to my original point of healthy honeybees. So that's I'm practicing being as quick as possible. So did I answer the question?
You did a great job. You did a great job. And it gave me so much more context than I've ever had to understand about what you do and where you're coming from. Yes, JP's putting up the bee as a wonderful, happy sign. And I do want to know more about how you learn about medicinal plants in Hawaii and why the local nutritional specialists and other kinds of, doctors, who are increasingly interested in alternative approaches. We have a medical doctor who really is, as well trained as a nutritionist in those kinds of things. How come they're not all over this?
So can I jump in, JP? Is that okay? Okay. So I went to a conference this past month, and the head gerontologist doctor here in Hawaii, and she's also affiliated with the cancer, university cancer. So gerontology and cancer doctor. I know I'm getting her title wrong, but you're getting the idea. So
yeah.
She presented to the group a question, and she doesn't know I'm in the audience, but she said a comment like, farmers need to plant plants for our senior citizens that's healthy and nutritional and tastes good and affordable? And I thought to myself, I've never been asked that question in that way. I've always been asked, what are honeybees good for? And then I can list off, they're good for coffee, they're good for almonds, they're good for citrus, they're good for avocados. I can list all the fruits and vegetables and then go into even more detail that they're important for cotton, they're important for cows, they're important for chickens. But I've never been asked the question in that manner. And
Right.
and their discussion for that seminar conversation was senior citizens want exactly foods that taste to their liking. And I'm again paraphrasing, but they want recipes in a good, tasty way. And I understood that, but then I'm torn because the Hawaiian medicine plants taste horrible.
Hmm.
And I always cut it, meaning I take one medicine plant and I cut it with corned beef, the most oily part of corned beef, so that and I know, well, I'll eat it, and so others eat it. Is what the plant tastes so horrible. It's got a name that it's stinky rotten fruit if you translate it. So, and that's before it's cooked and before it's eaten and before it's done anything to it. So I preempt it for myself and for others when I'm feeding it to them, is that it's palatable. But Hawaiian medicine food in general tastes awful.
Wow. It's amazing. Really amazing. Well, there's a whole other field of endeavor that people interested in right livelihoods could get into.
Darin,
And
I had a question. Is your beekeeping your livelihood or your avocation?
So short answer, it's never been my family's livelihood. But it has been the means that my family put 4 of us children through college. It's how my grandfather made enough money to put my dad semi through college. It's been always at the, I guess, the hobby level, but it's always been necessary for other work, is what also I'm trying to say. My family's always been farmers, so bees were never the primary, but they were important to the farm.
Mhm.
And so again, the short answer, I'm going against the $7 billion a year almond antibiotics pharmaceutical industry, meaning how much antibiotics they use just for almonds. I'd rather the $7 billion a year go to Hawaii farmers. And yes, it could be a full-time livelihood, or I could hand it off to someone else, or I could hand it off to my daughters. So I don't want it to be in charge of that kind of thing. I do want to be in charge of finding the solution, being that not necessarily the patenting of it, but the beginning of it, the start of it, the proof of it. Maybe I should put it that way. The proof that this is better than antibiotics, and that it can replace antibiotics in cows. It can replace antibiotics in chickens and pigs. And then we'd have a healthier, cheaper, better, healthier food system that's regenerative, meaning I'm not vegan, but I still want healthy cows.
Hmm.
I still want healthy animals, including
Mhm.
honeybees. And so and I want antibiotics just as that last resort when we need them. So
Got it.
I know I didn't answer that clearly enough, but
Oh, no. It's good.
I have an aim that's beyond my generation,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
And I know JP
Absolutely.
has her hand up, but I'm also interested in what you do for a living for your family and what we can do on this right livelihood call for you.
So shortest answer is listening and yelling at me if I'm not ever being clear enough. If I said something that doesn't make sense or will be misunderstood by not just people in the regenerative earth community type people, but if it would make no sense to just when I have to pitch to Blue Diamond Almonds or when I have to pitch to Ocean Spray, if I'm ever so in my head, then I need to know that. If I'm too far down the rabbit hole, I need to know, Darin, we know what you're talking about, but others won't. I need to be stopped in my tracks now before. So right now, for health reasons and for financial stability, I work at the U.S. Post Office, and that the job is called a mail handler. So it's a physical labor work on purpose, meaning I've lost 130 pounds on purpose for my health.
Wow.
So I lost 50 pounds the first 3 years I've worked there, and then just recently, 8 months-ish ago, lost another 80 pounds. So I'm working also on not taking pharmaceutical medicines for health reasons. I know I look like I'm only 22 years old, but I'm making a joke for the recording that I know I want to live long enough to help my children at least know everything I know so that they can choose to be stewards. And then there's 2 stewards instead of just me.
Hmm. Wow, that is fabulous. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I had asked, you were totally clear all the way along. So I don't know what you were saying about being clear. I asked you a question, you answered it perfectly, and I wanted to know what you do for a living. And it's really genius to do what you're doing, because it also frees your mind. So you are being taken care of, but you know, so if there's anything about right livelihood that you want us to talk about for your purposes, you know, we should make sure we get those things up on the table. That's all. You're amazing. You're amazing. And I've actually seen the difference in your weight from the time I first saw you on these calls. You look like you'd lost weight. So congratulations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great.
I think JP she was saying her
Yeah.
hand is
Let's go to JP and then we'll come back to you and see if there's more that we can provide. Good.
Yeah, that's actually what I wanted to do, was support, offer some words here, and possible connections. So, Darin, have you seen the film Kiss the Ground?
Mhm.
So my first thought is that you would do well to be friends with those folks. And the father of one of the founders lives on Maui in the South in Kipahulu. He runs the La'ulima farm, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. So in terms of people who will understand your mission and have been down that road a fair bit, just might be really good for you to connect with them. Yeah, they'll get what you're talking about. and they're on a very similar mission. And there's so many ways to do it. I mean, when I think back to the founders of, so the previous generation before Kiss the Ground came into being, they created something called Cafe Gratitude in California. And what it was a high health focused series of restaurants, and a new restaurant concept. And it worked pretty well in the Bay Area, and it worked fantastically in Southern California. And it really, in urban areas where people deeply cared about this, they really were looking to brand eating in the style that you've just described. So they weren't entirely successful with it. And so there's lots to be learned from what, they actually, I believe, still are quite successful in Los Angeles, where, of course, being as healthy as you can possibly be is, a religion. So yeah, anyway, that occurred to me that those would be really good friends for your endeavor. And I just wanted to offer that. Oh, also just a note on being part of the Postal Service in Hawaii. I have a very good friend who, that's exactly what she did. She raised her 2 boys in Hawaii, and having had them and having all her pregnancy weight, she went to deliver that. She was a delivery person. And in those days, it was a lot of walking, because they didn't really use vehicles so much in those days. And so, yeah, she lost all the weight thanks to the post office too. Yeah.
Well, and our postal delivery is still done by somebody who's walking and providing it by hand. I don't know if she gets to her street by walking, but it seems like she's going around, and certainly comes around to our house every day. That's
Here they have a
wonderful.
little golf cart with a thing over it. So if it's raining, they're covered. But yeah.
Yeah. Great. So back to Victoria's question. Is there anything that we can do? And I do want to say, just for JP's benefit, and Victoria knows this as well, that we are going to have a conversation this weekend about becoming a fiscal sponsor for your work. And so that's one way in which we can help. But are there other ways that, Right Livelihoods can contribute to what you're up to?
So I'd like to answer this question. So I've done at startup school for Y Combinator, and different accelerators and different workshops. And how do I say this humbly? What help I needed wasn't in that skill sets. It was always this how to be clearer. And finally something clicked with me that this group, the Earth Regenerators, has helped me get over from here to here.
Okay.
And so I've finally been able to calm down enough, be able to explain clearly enough, and then so I'm being honest that I know you've helped me from here to here in a shorter amount of time than this long with all the other accelerators is what I'm trying to say. And so that part I'm grateful for the, yes, if I would have prepared a half an hour speech or a 10-minute speech, that's what this group could help me with next. And am I prepared this minute? No. But I would answer any questions
Mhm.
because I'm still stuck in my head that I wouldn't be able to just do it like an extroverted person can just give their
Right.
whole half-hour spiel
Mhm.
on no notice. I'm not that way. So
Mhm.
answering Victoria's earlier question, the group can still help me if you're still willing to listen again
Mhm.
and saying in a next time before I have a next. So my huge, what I call the zero sum game in my head is Blue Diamond is the $7 billion customer. And or I give that presentation, I want to do it here in this safe area first and
Okay.
make sure I have all my baggage
Mhm.
dealt with is the ask. I should put it that way.
Got it.
My ask would be
And
to do that ahead of time, but I'm not
I,
ready to present to
I
them
got it.
yet.
Yeah, and just before we moved to JP, I just want to say that I used to run an incubator at a university, and I used to go to lots and lots of VC pitches, and even at one point looked at the possibility of creating a venture fund in New Jersey, and decided not to. And it's a very fun story, but let's go to JP, and if there's time, I'll tell that story.
I just have a quick question for you, Darin, which is, have you ever participated in Toastmasters?
So just 2 or 3 events of Toastmasters, and it I how do I say, it wasn't what I was looking for at the time, or either I wasn't ready or I wasn't. So and this was at the beginning of my figuring out stuff also.
Mhm.
So before
Oh
I've
yeah,
never
that's
to
that's
do
an
this.
invitation to you. I just have a little story about it from a friend of mine. She's an amazingly brilliant person, but in her form of expression, you couldn't understand half of what she was saying. It was like her brain was running way in front of her mouth. And so she's spent the last year in Toastmasters, and it's a 180. She is clear because she's had the opportunity to tell the story over and over again at different aspects in a safe space. She just won an award. She just won one of their awards, and it's like, holy moly! I mean, I was listening to her a year ago, and there's no question about her brilliance and her intelligence. It was just about being able to build this muscle of clear speech. So I just wanted to encourage you in that direction again, or maybe go back to that well. Over to you, Jonathan. I do want to hear the story.
Well, it was funny. I'm not even sure I remember. Oh yeah, I was part of something called the Institute for Sustainable Enterprise at Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey. Fairleigh Dickinson is a private university. It's a nonprofit, and it's not doing well financially. It's got its problems, but it's still considered an elite school in New Jersey. So they still charge people, I don't know, 60 grand a year or whatever it is these days for coursework. But in the course of being in that institute, which was not a paid position, um, I had the opportunity to do a whole bunch of things. Um, and so one of them happened to be meeting the head of New Jersey's Economic Development Authority, who was a woman by the name of Karen Franzini, who herself had a really wonderful life story and interesting person. And I mentioned this idea of, maybe we ought to start a venture fund, because the Economic Development Authority does a lot of real estate investing, but they don't do a lot of, they do have an incubator, that they run called the New Jersey Technology Center or something like that. And she gave me $5,000 to go and research whether it made sense to create a venture fund. And I went to several different places. I went to Philadelphia mostly and talked to venture fund people there. And I came back and I said, I'm going to give you your $5,000 back because we can't do this. It's become very clear to me. She said, I don't think anybody has ever returned money to us. But they were happy to accept it and happy to kind of know this kind of crazy, eccentric person out of the university for a while. And we still are working with the Economic Development Authority to this day. There may be some carryover from that because the person who's in charge of the person that we're working with was actually around then, and I knew her, and she knew the story. So that's
So
my
I'm
funny
curious
story.
why you decided, what was the aspect of it that wouldn't work?
Well, basically what I learned from speaking to existing VCs was that it has a lot to do with your connections, and that it would take me 20 years, most likely, where I was starting from, to make enough of those connections to be able to pull together an actual fund. We were looking at, small fund, $20 million, something like that. But they still felt that it would take forever to do that. And I just said, well, I don't have the time in my life to spend doing that. And the incubator that I ran was an incubator for sustainable businesses. I worked with a couple of the small companies doing mainly things to do with small hydro and several things that were not really successful, but were nonetheless very interesting. And we did get a little bit of funding out of the government before Chris Christie became governor and shut everything like that down and just completely put us out on the street. And eventually the Institute folded as well because the people who were running it could not figure out how to get to enough wealthy people to have them put the money in. And so the university couldn't support it. The university itself is, what a place. And so most of the folks that I worked with are now retired from their professorships, but they had some interesting programs that involved taking people to Costa Rica and really putting them through their paces in terms of developing sustainable business plans. They were quite rigorous about it and quite fabulous about it. So I really enjoyed working there and learned a lot, as in all my different aspects of career. What more would you like to say, Darin? And then you're going to go. We are there.
Yeah. We are there at the
9 o'clock.
hour. Thank you, everyone. It's been absolutely lovely. Carry on and see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much, JP. That's great. So, and we could certainly wrap up as well. I know Victoria is battling a sense of fatigue and so on. So,
well, I mean, hold on.
Yeah.
Let's see. I am curious, since this is the right livelihoods. On Saturday, we'll talk about, the fiscal sponsorship. Are you looking to change your means of income? Have you met your weight goals and now you're looking for something else? Or is this actually a pretty good thing with, it works for your life, the post office?
so no, I do find value in this, and yes, I would prefer being more, how do I say that? Um, Helping others has always been my passion also. So I'm also a returned Peace Corps volunteer. I'm an alum AmeriCorps Vista leader. I'm, um, I've been both around the world and here in the US in charities, in helping Special Olympics, working with nonprofits. I was a grant writer for Head Start. So the post office was my weight goal, which I'm still hoping for a little bit more, and nothing. If you handed me $10 million, yes, I would leave the post office.
Yeah, you're looking to fund your dream about this, getting the work done to. And the other thing I would say, so there's lots and lots of things that we can talk about, whether it's today or another time. I'd love to, deepen our mutual understanding. Maybe we can start that on Saturday. But I would really challenge that the best thing to do is, in your mind, go to the Blue Diamond.
Oh,
I think what you need is the research studies and the funding to get this in, so that Blue Diamond would come looking for you. Because there are, I mean, you could go to them, but likely they'll steal it and not pay you. And the other thing, so I'd like you to think about that kind of thing. It's not uncommon that these kinds of things happen. And the other is to build a team so that you have ADHD too.
no.
Oh, okay. Because I thought maybe that you had sent that in the email, and
Oh, so I have a master's degree in education, and I've had many students who do have it. I'm aware of how I sound because it's also my passion coming through on something, and that's my hurdle. Not it when I'm talking about something like English or history or chemistry, then I'm by the book and boring.
So it's the passion. It's rain. It's channeling the passion into.
It's weight behind it. Yes.
Interesting. Well,
and I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I get like that too. And I have ADHD, as you know. So what do you think? There's, it's great that you have this portfolio career right now, including the post office. It's a pretty good employer, from what I understand. And it's a perfect thing to create a larger, longer term plan of where they can you can be used most effectively for your brilliance and your knowledge and expertise, because the planet needs what you know and who you be. So I think, Jonathan, maybe working with Darin, we could find processes that work for regenerative people in right livelihood, because I don't think we're, I think we're just kind of scratching the surface. And I know there's somebody, Jonathan, you met that does this for a living, or, she's expert at this. And I think we should find out and actually be able to offer a process for people in this space to be employed doing what their mission and vision is and their talents, because it's crazy to have this much need and the people who can do it are not employed in the right places,
Mhm.
And they're working in the post office, so they can do their other stuff in their own time. I mean, we need radically to get more people like Darin in the right places doing the things that they do best, and we need it now. So
Yeah.
you're an educator, I don't have any training in education, and maybe with this other woman that Jonathan found, we can learn from the people who are doing it and be able to get people on a faster track so that they don't have to flail like most people do. And a lot of it is
Well,
connections. A
yeah.
lot of it is connections,
Mhm.
like this guy, David Rose, who spent really a lot of his life in Maui. But he's also known all over at least the country, if not the world. And he's a good friend of ours. The connections to get you, in Honolulu, doing what you love where it's needed. It's probably a matter of connections. Oh, and the other thing is, Jonathan, do you think Tim still has his plantation of nut trees, macadamia nut? We have a friend who went to Hawaii from Canada and bought a macadamia plantation in Hawaii. I don't know if honeybees are needed for macadamia nuts.
They are. Yes.
He's a very well-to-do and incredibly well, we haven't talked to him in decades, if he's still alive even. But
Well, and that's my concern. I thought I'd heard that he passed, but
really?
maybe not.
Oh,
Man, that was maybe just an impression,
okay. But
Um,
that's just one contact. I mean, David
yeah.
Rhodes, may know people. We need
Mhm.
to get you connected. Yeah.
And what about your friend, the Hawaiian princess?
Oh, Sarah. Well, I could. She's not in a place right now where I could ask her.
Mhm. Yeah.
But she was born there, but I don't know that she has eventually, but she's just not in a mental state right now.
Yeah.
But remind me later.
Yeah. Great.
Do you
Well,
want to continue this right now, Darin? Sorry, Jonathan. Or do you want to take it up on Saturday and we'll, work out some other plans?
Being respectful of, did you want the recording to end? Did you want it to?
Oh, no. I mean, if we're going to talk
question
about right livelihood,
yeah, if you're okay to keep going, we are.
Yes.
Another 20 minutes. Sure. So, so I guess maybe the way to put this is, what question should we ask you that we haven't asked so far?
So I, answering it this way, I really appreciate how this is the first place that I've ever found, either on the internet or on the in-person workshops or incubators, that's allowed people like half an hour of time in order to just give their spiel. That is immensely valuable, that I haven't seen anywhere else. And maybe I could be naive, but I think that is that you mentioned it like being surface level, but I think it is extremely valuable. So then having it like the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, you're right. Then after that half hour kind of presentation, what is the phase 2 look like? And then what does phase 3 look like? And you're touching on it, Victoria. Like, yes, I have what many Americans would consider just a normal 9 to 5 kind of job. that's acceptable in our society. But what's the phase 3 would be how to get from the normal acceptable to regenerative instead of just American. Lack of the better English word of that one. But the phase 2, yes, I think so 2 other people that they are also struggling with right livelihood kind of questions, but they're willing to help me here in Earth Regenerators, that I don't feel right not being able to not pay them and asking them for longer help than the hour and a half or the half-hour little session or so if the question that I'd want answered specifically from you, Victoria and Jonathan, is what does the phase 2 look like? And that we're not stealing other people's resources, that we are being honoring others, but we're still going from phase 1 to phase 2 and hoping to get to this phase 3 of being regenerative. And that is a goal, and that is a question of how to get there, how to be as much of a value instead of only talking about things, which is important, but being able to carry that then forward and I'm thinking also of my daughters, that they can watch this recording in 10 years from now and know what the stages are, just like being in high school is the stage, and then going to college is the stage, and then getting a job is the final outcome, whatever that job looks like.
Yeah. I would actually say that there's no reason that it can't be, either the gift economy of gifts, but I think what goes around comes around in this space of ER. And I don't know that we have to have the expectation that people have to pay people to coach them in their careers. I mean, some people want individual help and some people don't mind doing this in a group. And if we create a program process together for Earth Regenerators and people, go through it like, okay, you do phase 1 and it's probably at least 7 steps, but that we can have people cycle through and say, okay, put a person on a schedule and you're going to do this one, phase 1 now, and then 2 weeks from now, you're in phase 2 and everybody's going to learn. And some people will never want to be the person in the warm seat, you might say. But they'll learn from other people, and there will be content in, the process, and that it'll always be people's individual, what they've kind of done between sessions and that kind of thing. And that will, my sense is if people are committed to do whatever individual work that they need to do or following up on connections, there's no reason we can't have this thing be in the same way that everything else in ER is. I don't know, Jonathan. But then Jonathan and I aren't the best people to ask about this because we generally give of our time with no bounds. And, it hasn't created a right livelihood for us, but it has created a wonderful, sense of fulfillment, but it's true that some people will hire people because they just want to do it when they can do it and not on some other timetable, but I think we should have this process. I think we should develop it, or borrow it and hone it,
And, especially because part of what Earth Regenerators is all about is trying to build this gift economy in a way that is sustainable, so that there's reciprocity and people understand and they are sharing value and getting value. And that does not always have to be financial by any means. But I think that where we are today, yeah, it's not the case that we are sustained by gifts, because we're not very good at asking for them, I think, is part of the reason. But I think it will pay off in the end. I think as we continue to do things, just like, Joe Brewer, figuring out how to get enough crowdfunding so that he can live and then give everything else away. That is, that's all that we really need, I think. And some of these things that we're working on may have enormous returns. And I certainly don't have any problem generating revenue into our organization, because I know how we'll use it. And because I know that it serves purposes. I've actually studied the history of money and of alternative currencies and all these kinds of things, and it's led me to some interesting experiences. And I'm committed that it doesn't matter if it comes back, in a sense. I'm happy to give it away because this is what makes my life meaningful. And I suspect the people who've offered to work with you may feel that way too. And so rather than, they're wanting to wait until you can pay them, they may want to make their contribution now to you. And obviously you have to judge it for yourself if it makes sense. If they are in a place where they can do this without harm to themselves, it's crazy to ask somebody to give when they can't. But it's so much of the value that I see exchanged in ER is of this kind. And what we're in part struggling to do is figuring out how to structure it and how to make it work for an economy, as opposed to just, an occasional exchange, sort of time banking and that kind of thing. So one of the other groups that I've been a regular participant in has been the Spirit of the Gift, and the whole dialogue around the gift economy. It's led to my working much more closely with Todd Youngblood. I don't know if you know Todd, but he's a real whiz kid. He talks about being in the Web 2.5 space because it's the bridge from the Web 2.0 to the Web 3.0, and and is committed to helping us be successful getting grants in the form of crypto and in the form of real dollars by contributing into that space. So we're now in the process. I've written a one-page little grant proposal for an organization called Give It, which is kind of like the Gitcoin thing. Did you get involved at all with the Gitcoin? Yeah. So they're a bit like that. They have sequences, and they started off with somebody giving them a whole bunch of crypto, or they issued a whole bunch of crypto and then got people to play. Yeah. So I would say, a lot of, we need to talk about a lot of practical things in order to make the fiscal sponsorship thing work. But I'm looking forward to this because as I listen to you, I realize that there are some enormous things that I can learn and things that I can discover by working with you. And so it's a delight for me. And if we're successful, great, let's share the wealth. But I'm prepared to put in the time and the energy and the effort because I believe in this. And I don't see what else I could possibly do with my life if I wasn't doing this. I'd probably slit my throat because, how can you live and nothing's useful? And not be dedicated to what you see as possible and to the challenges that you see. I mean, it's just amazing to me that people can continue to walk through life denying the reality of what we're seeing and not doing something about it. But I do understand that for a lot of people, they don't feel like they can or they know what to do. And so, one of the things that we can do is help people to understand within their own worlds what it is that makes sense for them to do and how they can do this. So, and I just see enormous potential in the stuff that you're working on. I mean, good God, if we could do something about the pollinator population, that's just, really, as people keep saying, it's the biodiversity that's going to get to us way before the climate crisis. So that's my little spiel. and I kind of am like you, except, I watch people like Joe Brewer do this thing that sort of seems like it's off the cuff, that he can talk for, half an hour or an hour and put together a coherent story. But he actually does do the planning and the designing of it through the, figuring out what he wants to put on each slide and what he wants to talk to. And that's, one of the real skills that you can turn into success in the mainstream world as well as in this world. So I guess that's what we'll work on a little bit in terms of getting your story and being able to present that to the world. So, because people need to know about this. I can't tell you how many people I have met who I think have given up on the being able to solve the bee population problem, being able to solve the bat issue, the whatever they call it, white nose problem. If we only set about trying to repair the damage that we've done to the planet, a lot of things would get healed by themselves. And so, and I say that sort of as a philosophical statement, not knowing a lot about medicinal plants. I certainly don't know a lot about it, and I would like to know more. I am one of those people who won't tolerate anything that doesn't taste good. One of those senior citizens who insists that if it's good for me, it's going to taste great as well. And anything else you could put into a capsule, I'll swallow that. That's where I'm coming from about all this. And truly, it's a pleasure to be in these conversations and to feel like we're making a difference and we're contributing. What's been interesting to us so far has been the number of people who are relatively new to Earth Regenerators who choose to come to these sessions because they feel like it's a coherent way into the conversation. And that's really one of the things I got from Joe very early on was, if you do certain things, it opens the door to dialogue. And it's a dialogue that can make a difference in someone's life. And, Victoria will tell you we're both heavily trained in landmark education. And that's all about personal transformation and making a difference in the course of a conversation. Now, it has to be a really committed conversation, but it's, you know, we've seen it in our lives, and it's another one of those things that we love to share. So I'm looking forward to Saturday night, and I think we could call it a day. If if you'd like to say anything on your way out, or Victoria, you know, please feel free.
Oh, I'd love to have Darin speak. I'd love to hear what you have to say, Darin. I'm fine, and I look forward to it as well.
I'm extremely grateful, and because I'm shy in general, I also needed a space like this kind of space, and like Andy and Kath's space is where I also, just sharing, I presented there, whatever it was, like the 20 minutes or the sign up. So these kinds of spaces are very valuable, is what I'm trying to say. Like, as a brand new person, I felt like I could, as soon as I got my feet on the ground, then I could join in this conversation versus something like a Joe Brewer presentation on something very specific. I don't feel like I would have, if I was a new person, have much to say. So that's why I'm grateful for these, and I want your help.
And we're delighted to offer it. So I
And
will send you
also-
an invitation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I would definitely suggest that the people that you have found help from, that you ask them if they have time. You could pay it forward in all the work that you do, or you could make a kind of an agreement to, at some time in the future, be able to compensate them. But most, most people don't really want or need that, because unless they're experts and it really is their livelihood, that's a different thing. If it's your livelihood and you're being asked to donate it, well, you have to decide where you want to donate it. But if it's not your livelihood and you're not an expert and you're being a sounding board and an intelligent contributor, all you could, ask. Don't hesitate to ask. People love to be asked, especially if you say, in the past conversations, it's been so helpful. It's like people are honored to be useful and to be helpful and to make a difference for others.
Mhm.
And just ask them to be straight with you, and you're not attached to the answer. I mean, you're just being honest that you would really love to spend a little time with them on your issue. So, or mutually, there might be things that they want to, be for you. So don't hesitate. Don't use shyness as an excuse. By the way,
Yeah.
did you know anything about Landmark? Do you know about that organization? Landmark Education?
No, I didn't know about Landmark. I'll look into that. And you did make me feel better, easier in being able to ask next. So I will practice that. I will.
Great.
Great. That's great. Well, Landmark Worldwide is the URL .com. And, I've been on and off spending years of my life volunteering for 40 years. So, and Jonathan for 25, 30 years. So on and off, mostly it was me, but, really, really valuable stuff, and not the answer, just some really valuable breakthroughs and communication techniques, like things that you learn. And it's incredibly affordable relative to other things that I've become introduced to from people in Landmark, that like Landmark is quite intellectual. I've moved on from there to something that's more spiritual and heart centered, and it's like the Think and Grow Rich kind of thing. I don't know if you ever read that, but have you read that? Or yeah.
I've seen some presentations like YouTube or Zoom or whatever that's called. Not the actual book. I haven't read it.
Yeah, well, Mary Morrissey, Morrissey. I think she has a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube, but the programs are like 1,000 times more expensive. So we've discovered that Landmark was really cheap by comparison, even though everybody complained about how expensive it was dirt cheap. And this stuff that I'm learning from her is like, it's about the metaphysics of having your dreams fulfilled, no matter what they are. And it really blows my mind. And Landmark has, like whoever put it together, Landmark, they may know this stuff, but it's so different, and it's not really in the work. It's, you really have to whatever to be able to, you can see it in retrospect, but it's not something they teach at all, because it's spiritual. It's, it's about what some people call God, and it's about the forces in the universe, and the electrons, and I don't know all the the science, but there's a lot of science in energy stuff, energy medicine, energy healing, like this. And I have become a big believer in it, and I'm just learning, and it's extremely challenging. And I'm committed to, being able to have that skill set and fulfill my dreams, including having enough money to enjoy life and do what I want to do, without having to have money be a constraint. But that's the least of my issues in life, and yet it does constrain me in so many other ways that avoiding it has only caused me pain. All right, I'll stop talking.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, and let's say goodbye, because we're
Yeah, we're
past
over
the,
time. Yeah.
and I will post this and provide the link and provide a little account of it that hopefully will get people interested in watching.
All right. That's
Okay.
great. We're on the verge as a civilization of having some hope for our bees with you, Darin.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. By the way, I'd love to see your name before the other Hawaiian thing be Lokani. Like you could say Darin, whatever, comma,
Oh,
because people call you Darin and nobody understands why, because you got this thing called B Lohani. Lokahi. Okay. Yeah.
so I'm on my daughter's computer. So-
I see.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
and her name is Amber Honey.
Oh, well, you can change the name. You can rename it. You know how to do that, right?
I'm on this lowest version of Zoom, so I have to figure out. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Well, it's
Well, you go to the participants panel, and if you see something that says participants,
Okay.
and you click on that, then it'll list the participants. And if you hover over your name and move over to where there's a little Zoom symbol, it
on the
allows you
right.
to change the name.
Rename. Okay.
Yeah. Simple. I do it almost every time because I have
Okay.
it set up so that Victoria and I, when we sign on, it says Victoria Zellen and Jonathan Cloud, then I have to change it. And so does she.
Great. Good.
Great.
I found it.
You found it. Great.
Wonderful.
Great. You can also do it, I think. Yes, you can, if in the top right, there's 3 little dots.
Yes. And
Do you
that'll
see-
do it as well.
You don't, on the top right of your picture.
Screen.
Your
So if you look at your picture,
You have to
top
hover
right,
over it.
should say mute and then 3 dots.
No, my mute
Yeah.
is down here.
No, no,
This-
no, Jonathan, on your picture, when you're in you can see yourself in the
Okay.
upper right, you got to hover over the upper right. There's 3 little blue square with 3 dots.
No,
That I don't see.
Okay, well, I mean, at least you know how to get there from the participants.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And you put your cursor in the upper right corner of your screen and you don't see those 3 dots. Okay. Well, if it ever does appear, you click there and rename is on the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All
All right.
right.
And,
Thanks.
we'll see you on Saturday.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'll
Bye.
send the invitation out now.
All right.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.